Thank you for watching Conscious Consumer Network. The live stream broadcast is free to view. You can pause and rewind live broadcasts to catch up, or view shows at a later date by accessing our free archives of all shows. Check out our broadcast guide to see what's on. You can show your support by donating to our network support fund. Follow us on Facebook and Twitter, or subscribe to the monthly newsletter for updates. We thank you for supporting free and independent media.
And good evening, everybody, and welcome to this night's presentation of Reclaiming Perception. We have Andrea Sadegh, who's a lovely lady who I had the privilege of meeting last year in Switzerland when I was doing some training courses with Sandra Effect. And the courses were about satanic ritual abuse for survivors and therapists. And as a result of Sandra gaining popularity on the internet, Andrea got in touch and we've become very good friends since. And I was extremely blown away, not only by the knowledge that Andrea's got, but the life situation she's found herself in. It is a bit unbelievable, and some people, if this is new to you, it might be difficult to get your head around that this is possible. But what I would say is listen to what Andrea's got to say, and listen with your heart, and listen to what's going to come out today. This needs exposing, and I'm going to pretty much hand over to you, Andrea. So if you could just give us a bit about your background, and I'm going to let you pretty much run the show today, and I'll ask questions as we go along. Oh, you're no sound on. Okay,
Thank
cool.
you for having me, Jo.
Yeah.
And well, my name is Andrea, and I came into the topic of satanic ritual abuse and trauma-based mind control actually when my then 2.5-year-old son came home and had horrendous flashbacks, horrible flashbacks, meaning crying, shouting, partly fainting. When seeing or getting remembered to the torture, he was suffering. In our case, during visits at his daddy's house, every Saturday from 9 to 3 p.m. And first, I could not believe it, that in such short time it was possible to do so much damage. But time after time, I realized that it's possible. I had no clue about the topic, meaning I did not know that satanic ritual abuse does exist, or I did not have any idea that trauma-based mind control would exist. So what I did, fortunately, I studied comparative literature and German. So I wrote down line by line as an observer, as neutral as possible, what my son showed me, told me within the flashbacks, and sent it to court, to prosecution office, to family court, just asking for help, because I immediately realized that the situation is much too big for one person or even for one court. I also found out by chance that my son recognized some of the perpetrators. So I soon found out that the crime wasn't committed by pedophiles as we knew them before, but by highly brilliant, educated people who have university studies, who are doctors, psychologists, counselors, whatever. So I knew they must have done something on a systematic basis. So this was my starting point as a mother. And in those days, I just tried to help my son, comfort him. But when he was sleeping, I tried to find out much more about the system of the crime. Obviously, I was too good in that. So they took him away. I lost custody. And about half a year later, I finally found the term satanic ritual abuse and trauma-based mind control, and was so shocked because the lines I've written down the courts before asking for help were exactly one-to-one the same. Then I found later in scientific books about these topics. So this was my starting point for all these crimes, and I now actually want to get the information to the public, get out the information, how you can recognize the symptoms of the toddlers and the smallest children, because they have not seen movies in that age. They cannot just tell some fairy tales. They cannot fake their faintings or their flashbacks. This is 100% authentical. So this is actually my mission to do exposure in this topic, because this is nearly unknown, especially in the public, especially in general psychological schools and so on.
Okay, thank you. So I know when we met in Switzerland and we met in Watford near London at the end of last year. You did a wonderful presentation. So are you okay to run through that presentation on today's talk?
Yeah.
Okay, great. Just while Andrea is doing that as well, I want to say for some people who may be survivors of SRA, some of this stuff may trigger you. So just make sure that you take breaks from this and, take any necessary support that you can towards looking at some of the stuff that we're going to discuss this evening.
Yes, thank you for mentioning it. It's highly triggering. But my general principle is, it's secondary traumatizing. Of course it is. But what I'm always thinking and what gives me so much strength is that hundreds of thousands of children are going through these crimes every single day, every single hour. So I, as an adult, my opinion, I don't have the right for claiming, well, I'm so traumatized, I can do or say anything. But please be careful if you're not used to this topic. It's far, far too much. Is the presentation visible?
Yes, can see it.
Okay, good.
So you got, yeah, cool.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. We often hear about so many cases of smallest children talking about weird symptoms. Partly the cases are known or quite well known as the Hampstead 2. Their testimonies were incredible. Then we have many German cases that are nearly unknown. Of course, the case of my son. Then there are other cases like Aaron or Kian, or many French children spoke out like Robert or Deborah. And we have also many famous cases where we are wondering what's going on there. Here, actually, the most accurate case is the one from Anne Nicole Smith. I think nearly everyone knows the video of her where she's in a psychiatrical asylum with makeup like a clown, talking in the voice of a very small girl, and she's filmed doing so. Nevertheless, we also have cases out there in the internet that are giving us many questions. The story of Tiger Lily Geldof from Maya Tyndall, the girl who's pictured at the French Vogue as a present, cadeau. Barack Obama, Kathy Price, Jan Watkins. You all know this famous singer, I think. Bill Clinton in the video where he's completely absent. Arnold Schwarzenegger, he's Austrian. Some judges famous Austrian case of Fritzl, Natascha Kampusch, Felix Baumgartner. He's the Austrian who jumped from the orbit. Or the newest cases are the Pizzagate cases. Mm-hmm. Okay. Who is doing all these kind of crimes, and how we can sort this out? I'm talking here about trauma-based mind control. It's a highly intelligent crime, and it's not something that can just be done around the corner. So we found out over the months, or actually centuries, that trauma-based mind control, breaking the mind and programming a child or even a toddler over years, is done in nearly every group. Mostly at Black spirituality. There it started actually. So it's done in satanic cults, in the Roman Catholic Church, in voodoo cultures, but also in Jewish groups or Islamic groups. Then trauma-based mind control actually mainly is used in military and governmental purposes. Mm-hmm. We have a lot of military stuff, but also officials from governments, or prosecution officers, or even police officers. Here in Austria, we know we have testimonies, but also from America, that the Secret Service was asking, okay, we want your child, and it will become a very highly paid, brilliant Secret Service officer. And many parents are willing to hand over the children, not knowing, in the most cases, how much pain, how much torture their child will have to suffer. Next group where we find a lot of trauma-based mind control slaves or victims is the entertainment industry in Hollywood. So we know many actors, singers, models were involved as children in such programs, especially also here competitive sports. Meaning if you give a child a very hard training, as they call it, it just will be the best competitive sportsman or woman afterwards. Then the groups that are committing these crimes are also within the group of the academics or physicians. Here, the psychiatrists are number one. So they often are doing this kind of crimes with their own children. We know that many children that had parents being psychiatrists, I know they don't like me, but many of them had to go through this program. The same with psychologists, with pediatrists, eye specialists, because eye specialists are working closely with the brain, so it's very important. Then, of course, DNA researchers, dentists are important for implants and so on. Mm-hmm. What are we talking about? We know that the MK Ultra program started after the war officially, when many Nazis after the World War came to America, and they just went on with the bestial research they did before in the German-speaking countries. Their victims were mainly the Jews in the concentration camps or death camps, but also the local population. Many children were taken away from the families, from native Christians, and they also did bestial research on them, but the main target group, of course, were the Jewish. So they just went on with their research. And when I'm talking about trauma-based mind control, I'm talking about the follow-up programs. We know now that they're doing intergenerational studies, long-term research, and they're researching also the relationship between parent and the tortured child and so on. The next thing that we know for centuries, and it's mentioned for centuries, even in scientific literature, is satanic or sadistic ritual abuse. This kind of abuse or torture can be either in small cults, but it's also important in governmental projects. And there is a knowledge exchange between the cults, but also between the governments, as well as the exchange of children. And the basic torture, the basic breaking up or splitting the mind has to take place before the child is 3 years old. So I can't say it often enough, don't let your child alone before it has reached the age of 3. Even afterwards, there can happen horrible things, but this kind of programming is not possible. And we must not forget that also small local cults are able to do stable programming. To get it sorted out, now many researchers try to find an umbrella term for all this crime. And Michael Salter first mentioned the term systematic chronic abuse. We have many witnesses from John de Camp as a state senator committing that this crime is done. But many others, we have CIA documents, released ones, so there should be no doubt that this kind of research at least was done, you know. Good. We are, as researchers, we are of course always behind what is happening. Meaning scientific research in, the secret services are doing is I think is much advanced as we are able to understand at the moment. What we understand are some general basic procedures, and about this I want to talk now, how this kind of programming is done. In the most cases, the dissociation training actually is starting when the baby is in the mother's womb. We know that the womb is pushed or needles are inserted or the mothers are given bitter fluids to drink, and the mother should be traumatized. And if the mother is not willing that her baby in the womb is hurt, she's just drugged and then the baby is hurt. Then at some point between after birth and the age of 3, the kind of torture starts. We know that the babies are sexually abused, sadistically tortured. They are laughed and mocked during their painful suffering. They are forced to eat feces, to lap up blood, to eat raw meat, or they have to swallow or lap up urine or even vomit. We have reports of the small ones that they are chained, they are hanged up, they are ritually crucified, they are whipped, and they are violated systematically. And this is not a job that everyone can do. That's cynical, but they have special torture nights because they have to know exactly how to do, what to do, to which extent. If they don't look at it, and if the child is not able to dissociate, the child just would die. So their aim is to receive as many split personalities as possible, which then should result in the programmer alter personality. What do we mean by that? We all know stories that about that one person has different personalities, and mostly they are programmed. So the main goal from the Secret Services was to create kind of agents that have one personality, and in best case have additional personalities that who don't know anything from each other. Mm-hmm. So this was their goal, and you have to prepare this. Even if it's testicle, does it make sense?
Yes.
Okay.
It does.
Okay. What else we know what they're doing with the toddlers? They are bonded to a wheel. It's called spinning, which often leads to a polyfragmentation of their mind or the altar that is on the spinning wheel. We hear reports about cannibalism, about mutilation. Very often, very often, we hear stories about castration. But it's not a castration that you are cutting off the penis. It's more about the destruction of the inner genitals, the bulboredae gland, the ball bag, or the spermatic duct. Then we have reports about ritually killed babies or children. And they are doing a lot of parapsychological things. We don't know at the moment exactly. What we know is that they're doing some kind of energy exchange. They try to get the energy of the children. As well, we know that the perpetrators are handing over their own karma to these children.
So just for anybody listening, so energetically, karma is the shame, guilt, self-talk that a person carries with them. So if they've done horrible deeds, what you're saying here, Andrea, is that they will get the child to disassociate so they can steal the child's energy and offload their own negative deeds, guilt, shame onto that child.
Yeah.
Which, for people who don't understand about esoteric stuff, it might sound hard to believe, but when you look into it, it's plausible when you look at how energy works.
I mean, karma is hard to understand, and there are many discussions about it, if it exists or not. But what I experienced, and my son, he told me the most horrible stories, the most horrific, incredible stories. But what I found out, what he always tried to tell me about, he had to promise something. Promise, mommy. And I was wondering what would be the problem if he had promised something at that age, during torture. And unfortunately, we had contact with parts of the perpetrators, out of the family especially, without knowing. In my case, without knowing, and I realized that my son. It was the whole energy thing was very. It was a real big burden on his soul level, while the perpetrators were all happy and released all of a sudden. So I had it in front of me. I have no doubt, but I do understand that not everyone is believing it. Mm-hmm. And there is a very famous Hollywood movie even. I always forget the name. It's about Dr. Banassos in German. And it's Heath Ledger, and there also this kind of karmic transfer is discuss there. Okay. But I think we come back later to this topic. What else are the steps of programming? The toddlers then are trained and drilled after torture to learn different abilities. So there often is the personality of a child that his name is Peter, and Peter is 6 years old, and Peter is this and this and this with different. Peter is good in math, in I don't know, in languages or whatever, and there's another personality, maybe James, and James is good in painting and all that other stuff. So they really can put into or can train these alters to have different abilities and full personality, And of course, they cannot do this in 5 minutes or in 1 year. Therefore, they need the children at least 13 years, partly much longer, partly it's a lifelong training, to keep these alters alive. We know that the children have to work as baby prostitutes for two reasons. On one hand, getting raped is the most efficient way to keep them dissociated. That's very important because within this dissociation state, healing is very difficult or even impossible. And on the other hand, it brings money. They have to, often we have reports that they have to kill other toddlers or babies, and of course, most important, they have to obey the perpetrators unconditionally, especially in terms of keeping strictly silent about the happenings. That's the reason also why children are not talking about it for a quite long time. What else? This already mentioned. They have to stabilize their programming, and they use many ways of torture. And main tool is that they are getting electroshocked a lot.
Sorry, the dog's barking. I'll just turn my sound off.
Okay. From Sally, she is a survivor, and she spoke out a few years ago, and she was a trauma-based mind control trainer, and from her witness we have a lot of information, and she was describing that there are 5 steps of discipline. Not to need, not to want, not to wish, the survival of the fittest, and the code of silence. Very important is the children are trained to betrayal. There are internal wall structures, geometry, and the most important step is not caring, meaning they are trained to become perpetrators later on. We know that there is color programming. Mainly red is used for sexual things, pink for princesses roles, dark blue or black for soldiers or witches. Then there's the tool programming. Actually, if you have fantasy, you can do anything you want, and you also can change the colors. But to get into the system of a child you don't know, it's much easier to use the same codes. And even Fritz Springmeier was recently talking about, or writing about actually, that he's astonished that it did not change the codes because they want to use them internationally. Okay, then we know about brainwave programming. Then very important is that even the smallest children are already programmed for a role later on. So there's a military programming, a governmental programming, a secret service programming. Very famous is that the programming is linked to stories or movies or cartoons, and so on. Okay. I think I said it already. Most important is that they can split the core, that they are that they're also programming the denial. Quite often they have also virtual reality programming. So for us, it should be very difficult to find out, is it true what we're talking about or is it not true? And, well, what else? The children are used from better criminals. They already, as children, are doing some courier jobs or other operations. And actually, they're working very hard, even as children, and partly directly for the government. What I think what we all have heard about is that they love to blackmail politicians, whoever. First, they are doing some rituals with the children. They get filmed, and then they with these pictures of film they get blackmailed.
Yeah.
Okay.
Just before we go on to the next one, I saw an interview yesterday. Don't know when it was actually done, but it was of a Dutch high-level banker, and he's confessed that when they wanted to do the rituals, that's when it was too much for him, and it was a very powerful interview. Have you seen that one?
I've seen that one. Yeah. Yeah. I was very sorry actually that he didn't talk much more about the children. But maybe he did the interview just for 30 minutes. But this is exactly what it's done. Yeah. And even my son, who's 2.5 years, always told me there were cameras and pictures taken.
Yeah.
So it's and also here in the German-speaking countries, we have whistleblowers that are claiming or witnessing actually that they just put some kind of drugs into drinks, and then they're bringing the audience into a kind of weird situation, even kind of rituals.
Yeah.
And all of a sudden you have pictures or films taken from you during such a ritual where maybe a child is tortured or even killed. So these tricks, this kind of things are done by secret service agencies. Yeah, worldwide.
Yeah.
Okay, and very important are the memories. So the children are given drugs or electroshocks, deliberate concussions, programmed alters, or even implants to never remember anything from each other. So this is the big trouble with the adults who have all the symptoms, who have the stories, who have the memories, but it lasts very long when you're an adult to find out what was going on in your early childhood or in your childhood. Okay. Nevertheless, the smallest ones have clear signs and clear symptoms, mostly shown within flashbacks. Flashbacks, the meaning of flashback is that the small ones are going through all that pain and suffering again and again with tears. They are fainting, they have panic attacks, and they're trying desperately to tell someone. the stories are always in the child language, so you cannot expect that they are giving you scientific summaries of what has happened, but their stories, their reports are nevertheless quite clear when you have a clue about these crimes. They are trying to tell you that they have been dressed with weird clothing, like ballet dresses, wedding dresses, or ritualistic dresses with hoods. They often talk about having been married. They are claiming that a monster or an entity, a ghost, would have placed into them and would therefore live within them for the rest of their lives. Most important, nearly every child talks about that there would be a genuine home all of a sudden. Sorry. Which you would belong to from now on, or they are talking about an unknown parent that would be his or her real mom or dad. This is very, very important because also my son was reporting about a genuine mommy. I would not be his genuine mommy, but someone else would be his genuine mommy. Or he told me he was a daddy's. And I realized time after time that he was talking about many daddies, meaning every abuser was called, or nearly every abuser was called daddy, and many, many women involved in the crime were called mommy. So I was running in circles because I could not imagine why is he calling them mommy. And there's a very famous audio tape from the John Podesta Pizzagate affair, where we get a clue how it comes that a small child is calling someone else mommy or daddy. I think we play it later, no?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, we'll play it whenever you tell Biggie to play it. Yeah.
Okay. I think can we play it now, because I think it's so perfect to get an idea how this kind of situation is created, because it confuses the police officers, it confuses the psychologists, it confuses the social workers,
Yeah.
and in the end of the day, the protecting parents are claimed not to be good parents, because the small one is calling someone else mommy or daddy, you know.
Yeah. I mean, I'll just say before people watch this, if you've not seen it, it really did make my skin crawl. So
It's most horrible, but it's very important because no one thinks of it if you don't how it comes to this point, you know. Because I was thinking for a month how it came to the point that my son was claiming he would have different mummies.
Yeah. So if we could play that video now, Biggie, that would be great, please. Thank you.
You think you're hot shit, don't you? You think you're hot... Listen up! What's my name? What's my name? My other name. What do you call me? I am your father. From now on, you will call me your father. Shut up! You will call me your father. What is my name, huh?
I'm just a kid who's 4. Each day I grow some more. I'm singing. Each day I grow some more. I'm there, something more. I'll stand by you. I do. Tracy, Daddy, finding my way. Growing up is not so tough. I had enough. There's a lot of fun stuff with
Don't you? You think you're hot shit, don't you? You will call me. You will call me. You will call me. Say it again.
Just get lost. Just get lost. Just get lost. Just get lost.
You think you're hot shit, don't you? You think you're hot shit, don't you? Say it again! Say it again! You think you're hot shit, don't you?
Just get lost.
You think you're hot shit, don't you?
Just get lost.
You think you're hot shit, don't you?
Just get lost.
You think you're hot shit, don't you?
Just get lost.
Welcome back. It wasn't a very nice video to watch for those of you who watched it, but it does put some context to what Andrea has just been talking about. So if you want to just talk through some principles of that, Andrea, before you go back through the presentation.
Okay. I didn't catch the question why it's so important.
Just basically why it's important in context with what you've been saying in the video and in your presentation.
Okay. There are two reasons why it's so important. The most important reason is you're so confused when the small ones are claiming you would not be his or her mommy anymore. There would be a genuine mommy or even more mommies. And the same with daddies. You're not my daddy anymore. There are different daddies. And it's very important for police officers, for psychologists, psychotherapists, social workers, good-hearted ones, to realize that they are torturing the children into naming them daddy. And it's so important. And the second point why it's so important, no one knows nearly how flashbacks of the small one are, how it is to hear or see a flashback. When you hear this child, I can just say a flashback is exactly the same, partly even more intensive. So when I'm talking about flashbacks of the smallest ones, I can say I experience this on a nearly daily basis with my son. Being in this pain, in this suffering, in this panicking mode, and this is a flashback because we cannot imagine, And when you listen to this child, you can get a clue what the child is going through, what you as a protective parent are going through, and then listen, and then hearing some kind of social workers or whatever. No, the story is not true, because you have no doubt.
I can't imagine what it must have been like for you to witness that in your 2-year-old son. I just cannot imagine it.
I mean, I have the ability to dissociate, and I did it willingly, because I knew if I don't dissociate in such situations, I could not stand it. I just would cry with my son, but that wouldn't have helped him. So I just decided to go out of the situation, be there for him as an adult, and trying not to show him my own pain, because for a mommy or a daddy, it's heartbreaking just to think about such crimes. And when you see your own child in all this pain the whole day or for months even, it's heartbreaking. So I took myself out of the situation. So that was my recipe or trick.
Bless you. Bless every mother or father, parent who's going through this. But this is why this is important to get out there, because, to see the signs, you're not going insane. We're not trying to plant suggestions here right anyway. Just, as Andrea said, a 2-year-old child to come out with such details who would not have the knowledge to come out with what he came out with. And then what they try to do is make you look like the mad one.
Yeah. And authorities then blame you, not directly, but actually behind your back most often, that if the child is naming someone else mommy or daddy, then you must be a very bad mother, neglecting the child, and so on. So I go on with the presentation.
Yes, please.
Okay. Okay. Can you see it?
Yes.
Okay, good. The small ones are reporting that medicine was put in their bottom. They report that pictures and films were made of them, and they quite often show signs of feeling sick or exhausted. Um, Similar to the mommy and daddy storyboard, actually, is that they are tortured with weird objects. So my son was tortured with garden knives. They're here.
Mm-hmm.
With a toilet brush and with Mickey Mouses. And he was not telling me like we are talking now or on the kitchen table. He was mostly having heavily flashbacks during telling me such things. So seeing a toilet brush was brought him into a flashback like you had before at the Chambodesta audio. So
Mm-hmm.
having him with the toilet brush in his hand and having the flashback, you have no doubt it must have happened like this, you know. So you as a mother or as a protective daddy, you have to even then the challenge to report this to authorities, you know. Who should take you seriously when you say, well, my child was tortured with a toilet brush? So they are really highly intelligent, bestial, cynical games they are playing with you and your child and also the authorities, actually. Many children, or most of the children, report that their closest parent, mainly their mommy, is dead and buried. And nearly all of them were told that their parents have agreed what happened to them. So this the need for the cognitive dissonance training too. My son, for example, was convinced that I allowed all his pain and sufferings, and he was convinced that I got money for this. How come? His father brought him back with alimony money. So after torture, the small one saw, well, he got paid for my pain, and now he's paying her, so she must be, she must agree with the situation. It's really bestial, but who thinks of the situation that when you get alimony money, that the father of the child owns you, and the child thinks, oh, this is the money for me being hurt. Nearly all children also report that they have been kept underwater again and again, meaning waterboarding. In our case, it was that my son loved water. He loved to be every day in the bath tube at least once. And all of a sudden he was panicking and again had flashbacks, heavily flashbacks. The way he told me this was with the small film. Maybe we can have the film at least in a short version, if it's possible.
Yeah.
It's a kind of children movie where he looked at the film and he told me at this picture, he asked me, mommy, me too, at daddy's, what is this? He was very interested to find out what was done on him. So he had clearly a close death experience, and he wanted to know what was going on there.
So for people who can't see the picture or don't understand what Andrea is pointing out here, on that third square at the top, basically what happens on that is the soul of the mole, the animal, is leaving the animal's body.
Yeah. And we found this this animation movie by chance on YouTube when trying to find some intelligent movies, and he wanted to see this movie hundreds of times because there's a mole having an accident. A mole is making is driving with his friend, the mouse, in a car and is having an accident. And the mole is nearly dying. And after that, the frog and the mouse are taking care of him. And in the end, he's healthy. So these are all the elements he was interested in. Having fun, all of a sudden there was an accident, then the soul got out of the body, and then everything was done on healing.
Welcome back, everybody. Hope you got the gist of that cartoon that Andrea was talking about. So you want to just add some more context to that, Andrea?
Pardon?
If you want to add some more detailed context to...
Yeah. I mean, this cartoon is depicting the world the children are into. You're not talking to adults, you're not talking to, I don't know, the 10-year-old children. You're talking to smallest ones, the toddlers. And they, as I experienced it, they want also to find out what happened to them. And most important, they want to find out what is the real world. Because this kind of cults or satanists or even the governmental groups or networks are presenting to the toddlers their sufferings as the normal world. We know they are inverting values. Good is bad, bad is good, and so on.
Yeah.
And my son was desperately trying to find out which world is the real one. So he loved this cartoon so much because there was everything real and right for him. So we had to view it 100 times. But as I told you, when he talked about the mole who levitated from outside the body, he was saying, looky too. He was very excited because he wanted to know what's going on and why it's done. Mm-hmm. And the group always claims this would be normal. It's normal that your mommy is not loving you. It's normal that this happens to you. So they really have no idea what's right, what's wrong. Yep. And I had to again kind of teach him about values, basic values. He did not even know that he's not allowed to eat something out of the dustbin. He was going to the garbage and fetch some food out of it. He was doing the most incredible things I would have never allowed. And he then was also released to listen, no, this is not the real world. But nevertheless, now I don't know what he's thinking or believing after being at many foster parents, actually, as far as I know. I don't know if this has improved, but it's very important to train the children into their bestial systems, so they really don't know what's right, what's wrong.
Can I just add something here as well? Just as a person who's met several survivors now, and I've researched a lot and I've watched lots of videos of people declaring that they've experienced this, including some people who used to be involved in being the perpetrator, and there is apparently an intention to get the soul to disassociate from the body. So they put the child through an extreme trauma so that they can't handle being in the physical body anymore. And once they get the child to that state, that's where they can actually start to manipulate the energy and the subconscious mind.
Yeah. Okay. The next thing is the next chart is very, very heavy again. Mm-hmm. So please look the other side if you can stand it, because it's about that the young children have to satisfy sexually even animals, and we have pictures from that. And in my opinion, it's important to show, because over the last years, I always was told, no, this would not be true because we don't have pictures. We don't have proofs for that. So that's the reason why I prefer to show it. So to have this discussion closed, because it's happening. You see here, it's out of the Dutroux files. Joel van der Rijden published it. And you see a pregnant little girl, and you see children hardly being penetrated by animals. And also my son, I don't know if it happened to him or not, but I just know that before he loved dogs. And after all this torture, he was panicking when just seeing them.
It's just heartbreaking.
Yeah. And it's not about being sensational. It's not my purpose. It's not my goal. It's just important because general public says, no, we don't have picture. It does not exist. So that's why I'm showing it. Okay. Nearly all toddlers and children also report on being locked in basements or cages or coffins, boxes or water tanks, mostly in the dark for a long period of time. Then some of the children or toddlers are reporting that they would have seen devils or ETs. This is a very difficult topic in the meantime because they have their even 5, 6, 7D technology. So we have no idea for new generation what they really have seen, what they really have experienced, or what just was shown on them in this kind of holographic technology. Yeah, they report on being administered drugs or alcohol, or being sedated. For example, I found out that my son knew a mask for narcosis because he was panicking seeing a yogurt jar. And I asked him, dear, it's a yogurt, what's the problem with it? And he took the jar and showed me what was done on him, putting it over his nose. And I realized this must be a mask for narcosis. Mm-hmm. So 2 years later, I found it then in the scientific literature. But he already was panicking. And they report on being injured with dazzling lights or shrill noises, which we know are means to do the programming. Yeah. What else? Of course, they are beaten, kicked, electroshocked, and very often they are pricked with a needle. We all know from acupuncture how it hurts when a needle doesn't fit.
Yeah, so definitely. Yeah.
You can imagine how easily it is to hurt a child without leaving traces. Mm-hmm. They report on that everyone told them that no one will believe them, and they are also told that no one will believe the protecting parents, most of their mummies. So my son told me, I was told no one will believe me and both of us, not even you. So he was, at the moment, he was brilliantly right, at least officially, from side of authorities. And many adults told me, you're manipulating him into believing he would have all suffered this. You're crazy. I found around. You're a liar. How was he able to tell you? Then I got questions like, did you watch movies for adults already? Then suggestions like every child starting the kindergarten gets ill, or more open, I was told that there would be examinations for such children, but you won't get one. And in the end, actually everyone told me Listen, Andrea, I'm afraid helping. They're going to kill me or my children. So at the end of the day, after explaining for hours or weeks, they all claimed, no, sorry, it's dangerous. I don't dare helping. Mm-hmm. Okay. There are symptoms which are also described in scientific literature. Conditions close to autism, and they are appearing motoric constricted. Often they're shivering. These children are playing children games in a kind of robotic way. Without playing, they're more acting. Without creativity, it's a kind of trained behavior, trained playing. You can recognize this when you watch it a few times. You see it immediately. They are more and more emotionally planted, meaning they're showing less reactions towards touching experiences. There is partly a massive regression within their development. So they do need again soothes, they're not able to talk for a while and so on. And they have apathetic states, often accompanied with headaches. We know that these personality splits lead to extremely headaches. Then they show fear towards the perpetrators. They all of a sudden do not want to meet some persons or places again. For example, the kindergarten or the preschool or former beloved family members or even parents. They have horrendous inattention and stress. They have horror and fear of death, and fear all of a sudden animals, as I mentioned before. They have massive fear of getting punished, and they have severe reaction on things in everyday life, mostly accompanied with flashbacks. And they have massive fear that the perpetrators are able to hear everything. Problem is that quite often bugs do not cost anything anymore. So quite often the perpetrators are really able to hear everything.
Yeah.
It's no joke. Yeah. What else? They have deep losses of memory or even amnesia of daily experiences, or they have lost time on a big scale, even a small children. For example, after they took Lucky away, when I saw him for the first time again after a few weeks, he was not able to remember some kind of rituals we did every day. He had no memories about that. That's not possible. That the child is forgetting that some basic things, his most loved books, things we did every day. He had no clue about it. Then, what else? Yeah, they have extreme and spontaneous personality changes caused by adults, caused by perpetrators, and also caused by clowns. We know that they love to program in weird dresses. So the programmers are dressed like clowns, for example. And just imagine a child then being in the hospital for observation, and then the clinic clowns are coming. I think also in England you have the clinic clowns, no?
I think so, yeah. I don't have children, but I think they put clowns in children's hospitals.
Yeah. And we also had, during his observation, his short superficial observation in a hospital, there all of a sudden a clown appeared, and I witnessed personality change all of a sudden, an extremely personality change. So you have to be very careful with this in such trauma centers with children. Then they have massive feelings of guilt and shame because they're mocked and laughed at enormously. And they have severe reaction on common things. For example, I'm sorry to be a bit, I don't know, disgusting even, but for example, when they have heart defecation, this could remind them on the anal penetration. The same with nose bleeding, about blood rituals. So they are getting flashbacks, intensive flashbacks. Symptoms, what else? They get severe illnesses with no reason, chronicle, out of the blue. They often have nightmares. Over a period of time, they get eating disorders, ear problems, eye problems, and most of the doctors are prescribing antibiotics over months without looking deeper into the situation. Okay. This for the small ones, and I also attached some statistics. There's a very famous survey done by Karika Becker Overkamp and Roos from 2007, and they interviewed adult survivors of satanic ritual abuse or even trauma-based mind control, but also professionals who were treating the clients and also caregivers of child victims. And there, very interestingly, we have nearly the same stories and the same memories. So to give you a short idea, 86% told that they were receiving physical abuse from the perpetrators. 79% were reporting on sexual abuse by multiple perpetrators. 77% were threatened with death if survivor ever talked about the abuse. We have animal mutilations, killings, we have sensory deprivation, we have forced to abuse other victims, we have feces, we have blood, we have bestiality, we have being caged, we have near drawing experiences, we have spinning, buried alive, forced cannibalism, pornography, forced impregnation on adult survivors, bondage, sleep deprivation, incest. These were the memories out of 1,114 respondents. And yeah.
There's a question for you, Andrea, and you might not be able to answer it. You might not know the answer, but obviously the more I speak to people about this and the more I look into this, the more shocked I am at the number of people across the planet who are actually going through this or have gone through it. So what's your gut feeling? How many? I mean, obviously you can't put a number to it, but you know, I feel like it's thousands and thousands. It's millions.
I mean, I found out in my research, at least, I found out that there are different steps of programming, meaning the intensity varies a lot, you know, because, sorry to say it like this, but it's a big difference if a child got raped or got raped several times. It's horrible for the child, you know, no child should be harmed or hurt in any way. But it's a difference if you are drilled to accept this kind of torture. And in my opinion, the intensity varies, so it's hard for us to find out. And also the rate of trauma-based mind control programs per capita for each country varies also a lot, in my opinion at least, you know. Then do you have the governmental networks, or do you have the networks from any church or other institutions? And I think it's hard to estimate, actually.
Mm-hmm.
I just can say, well, in my opinion, Austria, we were a Nazi country. In our opinion, the research here never stopped. And the same we have in the United States, the same we have in Great Britain, but also in the former East countries. They did a lot of trauma-based mind control programming there. It's very difficult. Some say 1 or 2 million. Some are talking about 10 to 20 million.
Mm. Yeah, I know Jay Parker. I think he said is it 10% of all the population is practicing Satanist, which is massive, isn't it?
Yeah,
that's in America.
Yeah, and also the precepts are very important. We have here a term called Schwarze Pädagogik, black education, meaning being very strict, being very hard and drilling in the educational system. So we have this problem here in the German-speaking countries for actually hundreds of years, that children in schools are beaten, that they are drilled. So it's very, very difficult to get an idea.
Yeah.
What this kind of injuries on the body and the soul is causing in the long term. Yeah. Okay, I just showed next. We are nearly finished.
Okay.
Can I ask
lots of questions at the end. So.
Okay. Question is, we know we have many whistleblowers that told us it's possible that there would be the possibility of a forensic examination over MRI, CT, blacklight, or nuclear medical examination.
Mm-hmm.
And this examination would clearly be able to find out what was done to the child. Interestingly, after a few weeks, I was asking authorities, please give my son an MRI and CT examination, because I think this is the only way to find out the truth.
Mm-hmm.
Scientifically based, because I had no idea that there would be scientific literature about satanic ritual abuse or trauma-based mind control, because I didn't know the catchphrase. And since 2011, I was not allowed for him to have this examination until now. So there must be much more inside this technology. Otherwise, he would not be afraid to give him this examination. And from other survivors, I learned that there are special body parts that always, or nearly always, or quite often get damaged. So the inner organs, there are scars or they are dysfunctional because of the beating, and mainly the liver, the kidney, and the stomach. There are nearly always chronically and irreparable damages on the joints, on the back, especially on the spinal discs, the sacral and the coccyx. Then we have troubles partly with the eyes and with the ears. I spoke before about the impotence through crushing or mutilation of the inner genitals. Mm. And all these chronic injuries overstrain, of course, the brain, and especially in combination with drugs. So we have then DIT, MBD, PTSD, autism, schizophrenia, or however this is called. And a small examination via MRI or CT or nuclear medical technologies could easily find out what's going on. And nowadays, also very important, you also could maybe find implants, you know?
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Question is, why are not every specialist, why not all the specialists are sitting together around the table and trying to find kind of procedures to find out more about the crime?
See, the thing is, most people want to pretend it's not happening. So they're either part of it or frightened to suggest it because of peers or, you know, and they'd rather label mothers and survivors as fantasists rather than believe it's possible.
I mean, for example, I wrote it down to quotes. I wrote it in a kind of complaint, and I wrote down, give my son, please, this examination, and in case he doesn't have anything, you can have him.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm still wondering, they did not accept it because they could have stopped the Sadegh case in 2011 already,
Mm-hmm.
after having given him this examination.
Yeah.
It's quite easy, no?
Mm-hmm. Absolutely.
So mother is present, child is examined, child doesn't have anything, mother loses custody. Very easy, no?
Yeah, easy.
I asked them in written, 2 courts, the prosecution office and the family court in written. They did not accept it. But they accepted that I lost custody a few months later and so on. So it does not make sense. And I think they must be so afraid of this examination. And yeah. But, okay. In the last chart, actually, here now the professionals are describing what they experienced with her clients. They are talking about that 99% would have post-traumatic stress disorder, 97% have sleeping problems as adults, 96% have painful body memories, 95% have unusual fears, then we have suicidal thoughts around special holidays, birthday, and so on. And then we have self-mutilating behaviors, belief systems indoctrinated by the perpetrators, eating disorders, many hospitalizations in psychiatric units, headaches, suicidal thoughts, feeling guilty. Then also highly interesting and very sad, 74% have the infliction of sexual pain on self and on others. Then we have autoimmune disorders, unexplained bruises or wounds, especially also scars, substance abuse, and so on and so on.
Yeah.
And this is the report from the professionals about this crime out of 2007. That was the presentation from my side.
Okay, well, thank you. Well, I have got some questions, and it says, can you just put that slide back up again that you just said? Sorry, the last one.
This one?
Yeah. So as a therapist, you know, I'm looking at the stuff that's on there, and you know, I've recently helped people help themselves who have got substance abuse challenges, and you know, it does quite often go back to some severe trauma that they've bottled up and hidden. And you know, there's a lot of stuff that's on that chart that I can recognise as a therapist when people come to me with, you know, these kind of problems. So it's interesting to see it all together, the percentage of the survivors, because they're quite high rates, aren't they, in all those areas?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, incredibly high. And in 2007, we did not know so much as we do nowadays. So it's extreme. Yeah.
Yeah. So what I want to do now, Andrea, is to take the opportunity to, obviously, if anybody's listening to this and they're being triggered or they're thinking, I've seen these symptoms in my child or someone else's child, and we're not here to plant suggestions, but we want people to keep an eye on it, look at it, consider these possibilities. And if somebody's convinced that somebody they know or love, or they're a survivor themselves, how can they reach out to support groups? So I know if you can maybe talk through your website, what you put together, or any support groups you're involved with.
Okay, wait, I start the presentation now.
Okay, yeah.
Okay, am I back?
Yes, you're back, yeah.
Okay, good. Well, this topic still is very difficult. We have so much knowledge, but what we experience is that in the end of the day, it's very difficult to help protective parents, mainly mothers, and their children. So everyone has to decide for him or herself what to do. We are far away from a situation that authorities would know about the crime. We are far away that physicians know much about it, or psychologists, or psychiatrists, or psychotherapists. So I'm warning, because many mothers tell me that they contacted a psychotherapist and they hoped that it would get help, and it didn't. We hear so many stories that especially protective mothers are even flying with their kids. Now we have the case in the United Kingdom with Samantha Baldwin, whose sons were abused by several abusers, and police were searching for them 24 hours for 1 week, a day for 1 week, and they found them finally, and the boys are in custody now, and she's facing a court trial for having abducted them. So be very careful where you go to, where you get your information. There are specialists specialized on that. Try to contact them. And very important is you need some kind of evidence, So my recommendation is to, when you are in the situation as mother or even as daddy, try to get an MRI or CT or a kind of nuclear medical examination on your own. Best accompanied with a lawyer who should film everything, even during the examination, and then try to go to court or the police. Because when you go to police, quite often they tell you, yes, come later, or yes, we will do something, and you wait at home and no one is doing anything. And later you are told, well, now it's too late, sorry, we can't find anything. This is the experience, at least in trauma-based mind control cases or satanic, sadistic, ritual abuse cases. I've heard, I've learned.
Yeah, I've heard of some. So what about your website? Can people find information on there, how to get some help?
Yes, on the website you can, on the trauma-based mind control website, you can get a lot of information, especially here, I must have, especially in German. But for example, in the English-speaking countries, Ellen Lecter is specialized on that too, as a brilliant psychologist.
Who's that? Sorry, say that again.
Ellen Lecter is an American-based psychologist, and she has the website endritualabuse.org. She's specialized on children too. So, and she's a psychologist. I'm just a counselor. I'm not a psychologist. I just can give hints. Everyone is welcome to contact me, but I can't write the diagnosis. I can't give treatments to the children. I just can help you find out if a child is concerned which crime was maybe done with him or her. This is my special field, and also finding out which perpetrator group is behind them. Is it a local cult? Is it a family thing? Is it a satanic cult, or is it a governmental network?
Yeah. Okay.
Yeah.
So if people want to get in touch with you on your website, they can do it through that forum. Yeah.
Yes, and I can hand them over information for the English-speaking countries then.
Yeah. Okay. So I mean, I think this is a real lot to digest. And first time I ever heard your story, it was like, wow. One of the things that I've covered it a little bit before. You talked about your ability to disassociate,
Mhm.
and there are some parents who can't maybe do what you're doing, or what tends to happen. These groups are quite powerful and strong,
Mhm.
and they've been doing it for a long time.
Mhm.
And they have the ability to make the parent, the suspecting adults, think that they're going crazy and they're imagining things as well, haven't they?
Yeah, that's an important point. Yeah. This is nearly the most important point, I think, because they are really in extreme cases, meaning satanic ritual abuse, governmental trauma-based mind control is always extreme. So they're really hunting mainly the mothers. I know a few protective daddies too, but mostly mothers are concerned. So they are hunting you as a mother. They are breaking into your flats. They are gaslighting you. They are changing something in your flat. They're destroying your software. They're destroying your laptops. They try to delete or destroy some evidence you have. And as soon as Intel is involved, they can enter everything. For example, after my son was snatched from the government, I brought my laptop into a bank safe and also an audio device where very important meetings were recorded. And a few days later, I thought, no, that was maybe not clever, because if there's really so much Intel involved, they have access to the bank safe.
Mm-hmm.
So I ran to the bank, and everything was deleted, meaning that the laptop was deleted totally, and the audio tapes. This is very interesting. Partly they were deleted, and partly they were even changed. And for the changes, I have witnesses. But if every court says there is no initial suspicion, you can't do anything, because they want to have a look at your evidence.
Mm. Yeah, so I think it's about being extra vigilant, isn't it? Seeking out sources that you can trust, because a lot of the bodies that are put there, so for example in the UK, that you'll have something like an organisation called Childline. So the more I've heard things about this, I mean, I can't prove this and I'm not saying it's 100%, but what people have suggested to me is that they put gatekeepers in these organised so-called child protection organisations, so people feel safe to come forward with the stories, and that's where it stops. And if they mention anybody like famous, rich, wealthy, high-powered people, it doesn't go beyond those gatekeepers. So it's not to make people feel that they haven't got anywhere to go, but it's to make sure that you do your research about people who are genuine and authentic, and typically finding other survivors like yourself is a good route to go, because effectively you're in a place now, Andrea, where you want your son back. That's your biggest goal, yeah. But your aim is to not let go of this and to help people who raise awareness, and to get everybody to know that this actually goes on, and to give people some way of standing together to rise up against it. Yeah. So I think it's important. But for you have, because they've taken Lucky from you, you've got nothing to lose and everything to gain from what you're doing. Yeah, because they've taken the very thing that you absolutely want. Yeah. So, but there are people who are in a situation where they're frightened of losing what they've got, loved ones, family. So it's about making sure that you surround yourself with people who are going to help you through this, who are trustworthy.
I mean, yeah, very, very many things I agree with you. I think when they did this on your child, on every single child, you won't have peace your whole life.
Mhm.
So actually everyone has lost everything because you will be under control, not to
Yeah.
speak out in a later on.
Mhm.
And the gatekeepers are there, yes, exactly. Because how comes that, yes, I have studied at university, I have a degree as a counselor and so on, but how comes that I'm speaking out? Not why aren't there many psychiatrists, social workers out of these child protection centers, as they claim to, yeah, to talk about it? You know, I'm not the only one who's having this knowledge.
Yeah.
And the other thing is, many of the child protection centers are giving the mothers the advice, in my opinion, the very dangerous advice. They just should talk about sexual abuse. So many are following this because it's more known, it's more socially accepted to talk about sexual abuse on children.
Mhm.
But in the end of the day, they, in my opinion, they could also do harm on their children, not getting out with the whole truth.
Yeah.
Because there are many different, even implications or law proceedings afterwards, not speaking out the truth.
Yeah.
And I don't want to blame any single mother. It's perfect what she does, or even the fathers. It's perfect. But in my opinion, this is very risky not to speak out the truth. So we have so many mothers talking just about sexual abuse. And I was talking with many of them, and they said, no, Andrea, listen, I don't dare to talk about something else. I know it's more, but I don't dare to, because otherwise they are just bringing me into psychiatry or into jail.
Mhm. And this is the thing, that, you know, there's a lot of people now talking about it, and there's some quite high profile people. Obviously we have David Icke, who's, you know, one of my heroes. I think he's fantastic. Just
He's
this
great.
bravery, just putting this stuff out there, and everything he puts out there isn't for everybody, but you know, you start to join the dots up and look at the intelligence behind it, and the whistleblowers and the people who come forward. And then, you know, I looked at David Icke's stuff and then met people like yourself and Sandra and lots of other people in these workshops, and the first thing I had to go through was, oh my God, this stuff is really true. This is real. And that was really hard to, you know, my head was saying, yeah, it might be true, but to know it's true. And then the scale of it, and how engineered the protection of these elite paedophiles, Satanist is. How they've infiltrated so many aspects of society and protect each other. And it's not surprising that people find it hard to believe, because they can't get their head around the fact that, well, surely everyone would know about it. If it's this wide scale and if it's this big, people would know about it, or there must be people, psychiatrists and etc. But the ones that do speak out, so Sandra Fect, friend of ours, has spoken out very openly, got some publicity, and now what's happening is they're trying to discredit Sandra in whatever way they can. And you know, this is what they do, is anybody who dares to speak out and bring this to the forefront, they will go overboard on trying to make that person have no credibility.
Yeah. I mean, yeah, exactly. It's like that, you know. And if you are speaking out and don't mind, you know, they're just hunting you, they're trying to kill you. Nowadays, it's very easy for them with their microwave weapons or radiation techniques. I had to fly Austria several times, and it's very difficult, and it's just necessary to speak out. Whatever you know, speak out. We can, if it's just, you know, what I told you about the symptoms, you know, if 20% would be right, it's far than enough, you know. I'm convinced it's more, but even if just 50% are right from all the witness reports, it's more than enough. And just speak out and stand aside to everyone, help each other, because otherwise we can't get rid of the trouble. And we have the situation that secret services, politicians, they all went through a kind of program. So like in the first chart, like Carmen Holiday said, programmed robots are programming robots. And looking at the figures of child abduction from states, we find out that the numbers are rising. So why do they need so many children? What for? Then we have the Pizzagate. Then we have Dutroux. Then we have one scandal after the next. And it's the questions, why do they need this? And
I mean, I've got something to mention here is Pizzagate, for example. So high-profile person, John Podesta, campaign manager for Hillary Clinton. A lot of the alternative media and millions of people around the planet have seen this now. Some mainstream media have touched it slightly, but then all of a sudden the fake news hits everywhere, and they're trying to tell everybody, and including Facebook, look out for fake news. So they're trying to, for your layperson who hasn't looked into anything like this, they're trying to make out we're just gullible and we're believing everything we're told because it's not mainstream. And it's because they're getting frightened. And, this is a term of Cathy O'Brien's, there's too many fires for them to stamp out right now. And the more I sort of look into this and the more people who I see, and I absolutely admire people like you. I'm not just saying that, because you're on here. Honestly, I admire you so much. You're such a brave lady. But I do think you get out in a public profile, you're safer than hiding away from it. Do you agree with that?
Yeah, totally. The most dangerous thing is to tell friends or write on Facebook that you will publish something. This is the most dangerous situation. And I experienced that really some were killed before they were able to publish something. So never announce something, but just publish it. And Facebook isn't safe enough, because we know Facebook is just deleting your account. But nowadays it's no problem to open a WordPress website, getting a domain and publish it there. And the advantage is also when you do some uploading with some code files, or evidence, it's much harder for Intel to have it changed afterwards. So speak out, but be careful and try to write it down somewhere, and to never announce something, just publish it.
Yeah. I want to ask a question as well now, because one of the I've always sort of believed personally, in my core being, that there's something more than this physical being, that there's a spiritual part to us and this consciousness. But what I found, the more I've looked into satanic ritual abuse and seen survivors and the horrors that go on this planet that I wouldn't have even dreamed possible a few years ago, that my faith in a higher power has increased. So I believe, that they worship the darkness. The light is far more strong. The love and the energy of love is much more strong. What have you arrived at that same conclusion after everything you've gone through?
So I found out that's nearly cynical, I found out over the years, finding out the truth actually, or a bigger part of the truth. I think no one has all of the truth, but a big part of the truth. I get, even working on these horrible things with tortured toddlers and babies, I got stronger, I got much more stable, and I found a lot of healing. So it's incredible for me how the system works, how they, on a spiritual level. It's fascinating for me. So these are my experiences, and whenever I found a piece of truth, I felt much more stronger, because all these practices just can happen in the dark. And when there is light, when there's truth exposed, it's healing, I think, for everyone.
Yeah.
That's
It
my
is.
experience.
That's exactly the conclusion I've come to, and I do say from the darkest place comes the brightest light. And I have an intuitive feeling that the more therapists are trained to be able to heal survivors of such abuse, the quicker we put that energetic frequency into the collective of humanity. So this isn't just a small job, and I have this strong feeling about this. There's a lot of people who call themselves light workers, and they get ridiculed by some people and call them Love and Light Brigade. And I'm not going into ridicule. We're all on a life journey, and we're just playing the divide and conquer game. But I do also think that you can't just put your attention to the love and light and pretend that the darkness isn't there. And that isn't just in stuff like what we're looking at. It's also inside of ourselves. And once we start to look at the shadows and shine the light on the shadows in society, inside ourselves, and we heal that's an opportunity to perform the alchemy, to heal, to transmute the pain. And the more of the collective goes into the higher frequencies, the more we can undo. And the dark forces that have had a control over us doing these kind of things, the days are numbered.
Yeah. I also realized it with my son when he was 2.5 years old. Everything he was able to tell me, everything he was able to show me, we found out it was healing for him. He even forgot it. It was not important anymore. So I think truth is so powerful also in terms of healing. So I think many therapists, at least here in Austria, are claiming that it would be much more healthier for the children to forget everything, not to think about it, not to talk about these evil things. And I think this is completely wrong.
Yeah,
because healing, truth is healing, and you are out of the situation normally. So you can say, well, I'm here, I'm healthy, at least I have no damage or less damage on my body, and now I can heal, And but the secret is just for those in power who are accepting and willing to do these crimes, in my opinion, to keep their weird or perverted systems mainly.
Yeah. And I've also, I'm very spiritual now, but I like to put some science that is proven spirituality. And Lady Limit Taggart has written a book called The Intention Experiment. And there it discusses how they've had intentional prayers, meditations to bring peace about, to change scenarios, and they've got tangible proof that when a collective of human beings pray, put their attention to, as if it's done already, then the outcome of the experiments is quite astounding. So based on that, what I'm going to ask the audience to do is to pray and imagine, first of all, for Lucky to be back with Andrea. Yeah. Imagine that it's done, that he's healing and home with you, but for all the children across the planet. And each night before I go to bed, I pray, and I'm hoping that people will embrace this and take it on and put more out there. Thank the universe, the divine creator, for protecting all the children, for making it impossible for anyone with nefarious or dark intentions to make it impossible for them to get near the children. To call upon every archangel, spirit, whatever your belief is, Christ consciousness, Buddha, whatever it is that you believe in, pray and put that out into the energetic field that these children are protected. And as I said with Rainer Kurtz when he was on the show last week, what kind of society are we? We can't protect our children. We've got to protect our children.
And you must not forget that most of the children are trained to become perpetrators later on. So one child can cause so many harm on my opinion, on hundreds of children. So you just, if you're not looking at one child, you see what this one child can do harm to other children later on as adults.
Yeah.
And what I just wanted to add, it's very important. I found out it's very important to do the revocation of contracts.
Yeah.
This is very powerful. Somehow, at least here in a Catholic country, we really feel it, that there are contracts, and I just can recommend, besides praying, that the revocation of contracts of all kinds is very, very important.
Yeah. Can you recommend anyone where people can get an idea of how to perform a revocation of a contract?
I mean, I highly appreciate the ones from Veronica King, but I also publish them on the website in English and in German. Mm-hmm. But also the ones from Andrew Bartis are great. Mm-hmm. And I think it's not so important how you do it. It's important to just experiment on contract revocations.
Yeah.
Because they're playing with timelines, they're playing with dimensions, they're playing with your parents, your grandparents, your great-grandparents. Yeah? Mm-hmm. They're playing with your future. So you really have to find out what is binding you to which promise.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, how we've been subconsciously tricked and agreed to unknowingly to things that they because I mean obviously a cult is hidden knowledge, isn't it? And they have access to knowledge that they don't share with the main population. And to verbalize a contract, there is energy behind it, and there is some contribution from your energy field if you do that, and you can undo contracts by verbalizing it, can't you, with the right language?
And I also found out, because Luki told me so much about, I had to promise panically, and I then did some kind of revocations, even for him one night, and I was fascinated and shocked at the same time how released he was afterwards. He was sleeping, of course, but I thought in the next morning he was relaxed, he was satisfied, he was nearly happy, and just because I did one night revocations for him. That's incredible, no?
Yeah, it is. There's so many things that we don't understand the power of, and it's about opening ourselves up to the hidden knowledge and starting to utilize it to claim back our power, our perception, this reality, to bring heaven to earth through us and shine the light on that darkness so it can't exist on this plane anymore. And it's done. It's going to be done. And people like you, very brave people like you, out there telling the truth, despite what others may think. I can't thank you enough. Thank you for everything that you do for humanity, your son. It's so important, Andrea. It really is.
Thank you, Jo. But I mean, I all my life, I'm so thankful to you English-speaking ones, because for me, you made the first step. Without your research over the last decades, I don't know if we would be here anymore, because maybe it would have I don't know if I went crazy without knowing what was going on. So I found the first research from America and from Great Britain. So there are so many over the last decades working on this topic. So I'm so thankful for your work. And I think if we are just building up step by step our research, we can help maybe the next generation much better.
Yeah, I also want to say thank you to Mel and Biggie, who runs this platform. I was having a chat with Biggie. They get attacked left, right and centre, as you can imagine, by people trying to troll or discredit the kind of people we get on here. I don't even look at what's said. As far as I'm concerned, it doesn't bother me. I'm not putting a challenge out to them. I don't consent to anything. I'm just looking for the truth, and I'm going to interview people in here and allow people to tell their truth, and ask that the audience who are watching make of it what they will. But on that note, platforms like CCN, like Richie Allen's show, David Icke's stuff, people, if you can spare any cash, money, please donate to these kind of platforms, because you're not going to hear this stuff on the mainstream because they're part of the system. And even if some of the reporters do believe it, they wouldn't be able to report on it because the editors will block it. And it is that tightly controlled, even though a lot of people, even on my Facebook page, will push back and say that I'm imagining it. But at the end of the day, what I want to say is, please keep these platforms going. This is essential. Let's get this news out. Let's get more people who are like in your scenario, Andrea, access to at least just seeing this. Someone might say, oh, I'm not on my own. Here's somewhere I can go to get some help.
Mhm. Mhm.
Have you got anything else you'd like to add before we finish off?
I just want to invite everyone who has questions about the topic. You can reach me over traumabasedmindcontrol.com, and I'm happy and willing to answer every single question. Of course, not some troll questions, but if you're interested in the topic and have further questions or want to know much more about it, I'm happy to try to help you. And I just want to thank you, Jo, for your work and for having me tonight.
It's a pleasure. Thank you for coming on. Any news or anything you want to share in future, just give me a shout. We'll get you back on. And, hopefully I'll see you at another workshop in the near future, and maybe Rainer's or Sandra's or something like that. But it's a pleasure to know you, and thank you ever so much. So
Thank you,
that's it for this week on Reclaiming Perception. Thank you very much. Good night.